The sea had turned wild long before the ship broke apart. Dark clouds rolled like living beasts across the sky, and thunder cracked above the royal vessel Aurelia. The waves struck with fury, dragging men overboard and splintering wood like paper. The captain shouted for the crew to hold the ropes, but the storm drowned every command. Cale Ardent clung to the railing, salt water burning his eyes. Lightning flashed, revealing his mistress, Lady Elira Voss, High Chancellor of the Aurelian Empire, standing at the bow, her cloak whipping around her like a banner of war. She was the kind of woman who looked untouched by fear, even while death screamed around her. "Get below deck!" Cale shouted, his voice breaking through the chaos. Elira didn't turn. "If this ship is to die, I'll face it standing." He reached her in 3 steps, pulling her away as another wave slammed into them. The world became a blur of cold water, splintering wood, and the sound of screams. The mast fell, shattering across the deck. Cale felt something hit his shoulder, then everything went black. When he opened his eyes, the storm was gone. The air was heavy and still, the sand cool beneath his palms. He coughed out seawater and tried to stand. His arm ached, but he was alive. The beach stretched endlessly in both directions, silver under the morning light. Strange black rocks jutted from the shore like broken teeth, and mist hovered above the ground. The wreck of the Aurelia lay in pieces across the sand. Then he saw her. Elira lay a few feet away, her dark hair tangled with seaweed, her pale hand half buried in the sand. He ran to her side, fear tightening in his chest. "My lady," he said softly, touching her shoulder. She stirred with a faint groan, her eyes fluttering open. For a long moment she said nothing, only stared at the gray sky as though it had betrayed her. Then she whispered, "We're not dead then." "Not yet," Kyle said. He helped her sit up. Her once pristine garments, black and silver with the crest of the Empire, were torn and soaked. Still, even like this, she carried herself like a queen. Her voice steadied quickly, sharp and commanding. "Count the survivors," she ordered. Cale looked down the beach. The tide carried only fragments of wood, torn sails, and silence. "There are none," he said. Elira's expression didn't change, but he saw the faintest flicker in her eyes, a crack in her calm. She stood, brushing sand from her hands, and turned to face the jungle that loomed behind them. "Then it's just us," she said quietly. The island felt wrong from the beginning. The forest was green but silent. No birds sang, no insects buzzed. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The trees were tall and dark, their roots coiling like veins through the soil. They found a stream of clear water, a small mercy. Cale built a shelter from driftwood and leaves while Elira examined the horizon. She kept searching for ships, but no sails appeared, no smoke, no signs of life. That night, they lit a small fire. The flames were weak, trembling against the mist that rolled from the sea. Kyle looked across the fire at her. She was sitting straight-backed, eyes distant. Her crown, a simple silver circlet, had cracked in the wreck. She held it now in her hands, running her thumb across the break. "Do you think they'll send a search party?" he asked. Elira didn't look up. "They might," she said. "But not for me." Cale frowned. "You are the Chancellor of the Empire. They'd move heaven and sea to find you." Her lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. "You don't know the Empire as I do." She tossed the broken crown into the fire. It hissed, sparks flying upward. Cale wanted to ask what she meant, but something in her expression, tired, almost wounded, told him not to. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the sea whisper against the rocks. Days passed. They found fruit trees deeper in the jungle, and Cale managed to catch small fish with a sharpened stick. Elira began drawing symbols in the sand, strange markings that looked older than language itself. When he asked, she said they were words of protection. But each night Kyle felt eyes on him, from the shadows beyond the firelight. Once he saw a figure move between the trees. When he ran to look, nothing was there but mist. The air grew colder as the days went on. Sometimes he heard whispers when he slept, faint voices repeating his own words back to him. "If no one comes." Will you stay with me? He sat up one night, heart pounding. He hadn't spoken those words. Yet they lingered in the air like a question waiting for an answer. On the 5th day, they found the obelisk. It rose from the center of the island, a tower of black stone carved with runes that shimmered faintly in the dim light. The air around it felt thick, heavy with power. Elira's face went pale. "You know what this is," Kale said softly. She nodded once. "It's a marker, a seal. My family built these long ago. To contain something? What kind of something?" Her gaze darkened. "A curse." She stepped closer, tracing the carvings with her fingertips. "My bloodline is not clean, Kale. We made pacts with forces older than the Empire itself. Power always has a cost." Kale didn't understand, not fully, but the fear in her eyes was real. "We should stay away from it," he said. Elira hesitated, then turned to him. For the first time, she looked uncertain, fragile even. "And where would we go? The island has no end. I've walked half a day in one direction and found myself back where I began." He looked at her in surprise. "That's not possible. Not by mortal rules," she said. "This place, it bends time, perhaps even thought." Kyle stared at the obelisk. The runes pulsed once, faintly like a heartbeat. That night, the fire burned low. Elira sat beside it, her eyes reflecting the flame. "Do you ever wonder," she said quietly, "why we were the ones to survive?" Kale thought for a moment. "Because I refused to let you die." She looked at him then, really looked at him, as though searching for something in his face. "Always so loyal," she murmured. "Even now." He didn't answer. After a long silence, she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "If no one comes for us, will you stay with me?" Kale felt the air grow colder. The mist thickened around them, curling like fingers. "Yes," he said without thinking. "I'll stay." The words felt heavy, sinking into the ground like stones. Elira smiled faintly, but there was sadness in her eyes. "You shouldn't promise things on cursed soil," she said. Before he could ask why, the fire flickered out. The jungle fell silent, and from somewhere in the darkness the same whisper answered back, his own voice, twisted and echoing. "I'll stay." Kyle stood, heart racing. The mist moved, shapes forming within it, shadows of people long gone, watching from the tree line. Elira rose beside him, her hand trembling as she gripped his arm. "The island heard you," she whispered. He turned to her. "What do you mean?" Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark, silver and sorrowful. "Every vow spoken here becomes truth. The island binds it." The whisper came again, closer now inside his mind. "Stay." The ground shivered beneath their feet. The obelisk far away began to hum, light crawling up its black surface like veins of fire. Kale drew his sword. Elira's expression hardened once more. The High Chancellor returning, her fear hidden behind iron resolve. "Then we must be careful what we promise," she said. The mist parted for a moment, revealing the outline of something large moving beyond the trees. Not beast, not man. Its eyes glowed faintly blue before fading into the dark. Kale tightened his grip on his sword. Elira placed a hand on his shoulder. "If no one comes," she said softly, "then we will have to save ourselves." But her voice carried another meaning beneath the words. A longing, a sorrow he could not name. And somewhere deep within the island, the obelisk pulsed again, answering the promise he had made. The night was long, heavy, and full of strange sounds. Kale did not sleep. He sat by the ashes of the fire, sword on his lap, eyes fixed on the mist. Every time he blinked, he thought he saw movement, faint shapes like people made of smoke. Elira slept lightly against a rock wall, her silver hair glinting in the dying light. She looked peaceful, almost human, without her crown or authority. Yet the air around her still carried that quiet weight of command, like the sea that could drown and comfort at once. When dawn came, the island changed again. The trees looked taller, the sky paler, and the sea farther away. It was as if the world had shifted in the night. Elira stood, brushing the sand from her hands. "The island moves," she said softly. "It doesn't want us to leave," Kale frowned. "You said it was cursed. Maybe it's testing us. Or trapping us," she said. "Either way, we cannot stay in one place. We must learn what this island is." They packed what little they had: dried fruit, water from the stream, and 2 torches. Kale made a spear from a broken piece of the ship. The jungle swallowed them quickly, its canopy closing like a ceiling. The sound of the sea faded until it felt like they had stepped into another world. The deeper they went, the colder it became. Moss grew thick on the trees, and a faint hum filled the air, like the echo of a song too old to understand. After a while, they reached a clearing where the sunlight broke through in beams. In the center stood a stone well. Its surface was covered in the same glowing runes as the obelisk. Elira walked closer, tracing the marks with her fingertips. "These are binding words," she said. "Old magic from before the Empire's birth." Kyle peered into the well. It was bottomless, a tunnel of darkness. "What's inside?" "Memories," she whispered. "Or souls." Before he could reply, a faint voice rose from the well. A woman's cry, soft and distant. Elira stepped back, her face pale. Kale reached for her hand without thinking. "We should go," but Elira didn't move. "That voice," she said quietly. "It sounded like mine." They left the clearing, walking until the sound faded. The silence that followed was worse. Elira didn't speak for a long time. When she finally did, her voice was quiet, almost unsure. "Kyle, do you believe in fate?" He looked at her. "I believe in choices. Not fate." She smiled faintly, though her eyes looked far away. "Then you are freer than most. What about you?" he asked. "I used to think I controlled everything," she said. "But now, I think my whole life has been written by someone else. Every step, every command, even this shipwreck, all of it feels planned." Kyle stopped walking. "You think the island called you here?" "I think something did," she answered. "Something that has waited for me a long time." Her voice trembled slightly at the end, and Kale saw fear behind her calm. He wanted to say something to comfort her, but words felt too small for the weight she carried. Instead, he said quietly, "Whatever waits here, I'll face it with you." Elira looked at him surprised. Then she nodded once, her expression unreadable. "Be careful what you promise," she murmured. By evening, they returned to the shore, only to find the camp changed. The fire pit was cold, but footprints surrounded it, many of them. Some were bare, others deep like something heavy had walked there. Kale's hand went to his sword. "Someone was here." Elira studied the prints. "Not someone. Something." The mist thickened again, rolling toward them like a tide. Kyle felt a sudden chill run down his spine. "Back to the trees," he said. But before they could move, a figure appeared on the shore. A pale shape of a woman, hair flowing as if underwater. Her eyes glowed faint blue, and her mouth moved soundlessly. Elira froze. "That's—" Kale stepped in front of her, raising his sword. "Stay behind me." The spirit reached out a hand. For a second, it almost looked human. Then it dissolved into mist. The air went still again. Elira's hands were shaking. "She wore my crest," she whispered. "That spirit." "She was one of my blood." They rebuilt the fire, neither of them speaking much. The flames seemed to struggle against the air, flickering weakly. Kale stared into it and said, "My father once told me that every curse begins with a promise. Maybe this island remembers the promises your ancestors broke." Elira looked into the fire, too. "If that is true, then it remembers much pain." She reached for her cloak, wrapping it around herself. The moonlight touched her face, softening the sharp lines that power had carved there. "Kyle," she said suddenly, "why did you follow me into exile?" "You could have served anyone." He hesitated, unsure how to answer. "Because you needed someone who wasn't afraid of you." Her gaze met his, and for a moment the distance between them vanished. Only the fire and the sound of the waves remained. Then she looked away, her voice quiet. "You should be. Of you?" he asked. "Of what I might become," she said. The silence that followed was deep, heavy with unspoken thoughts. That night, Kyle dreamed of the storm again. But this time the sea was calm, and Elira stood upon it, her eyes silver and bright. She called his name, her voice echoing like a song. He walked toward her, but with each step, the water turned to glass, and his reflection stared back, smiling, though he was not. When he woke, Elira was gone. He jumped up, panic flaring. The mist was thick and cold, the fire out. He followed her footprints toward the jungle until he reached the obelisk. She stood before it, both hands pressed against its surface. Light ran across the runes, pulsing softly. "Elira!" he shouted. "Step back!" She turned slowly, eyes glowing faintly. "It's speaking to me," she said. "It knows my name," Kyle approached carefully. "You said it's cursed." "Don't listen to it. It's not the curse," she whispered. "It's my blood." My family's voice. "They're bound here." The obelisk hummed louder, a low sound that vibrated through the ground. Kyle grabbed her wrist and pulled her away. The moment he did, a burst of light flashed, and pain burned across his palm. He cried out, looking down. A black mark had appeared on his skin, the same mark that glowed faintly on hers. Their eyes met in shock. "It bound us," Elira said softly. "When you touched me, what does that mean?" "It means," she whispered, "that your promise to stay is now sealed in magic." They returned to camp in silence. The sea was restless again, waves hitting the shore with strange rhythm, almost like breathing. Elira sat by the fire, staring at her marked hand. Kale watched her from across the flame. "Can it be undone?" She shook her head. "Not easily. The bond is old magic. It ties your soul to mine until one of us breaks it." "And how do we break it?" She looked up at him, eyes full of quiet sorrow. "By dying." Kale's chest tightened. "Then I suppose we'll have to live." Elira blinked. Then, to his surprise, a faint smile touched her lips. It was small, tired, but real. "You always have the last word, don't you?" He smiled back. "Only when it matters." The fire crackled between them. For a moment, the island seemed almost peaceful again. Then the wind changed. The smell of salt thickened. The waves began to glow faintly blue, and whispers rose from the water, countless voices calling Elira's name. Kale stood, sword drawn. "What now?" Elira's face turned pale as moonlight. "They found me," she said. "Who?" "My ancestors," she whispered. "The ones buried beneath the sea." The waves crashed harder, and from the mist, shapes began to rise, ghostly forms in royal robes, their eyes bright with cold fire. Kale stepped in front of her, ready to fight, though his hands trembled. "Stay behind me, my lady." Elira's voice was low, steady, and filled with something between fear and sorrow. "No, Kale, this is not a fight of swords. This is a fight of souls." The spirits drew closer, chanting words that made the air tremble. The mark on Kyle's hand began to burn, and the obelisk in the distance pulsed again. The island was alive, and it wanted something from them.